Hey guys, so I'm going to show you in this video how to transfer your final designs for your tiles onto the tile itself. Now I've already taken my tile out of the bag. Do remember that every time the clay is out of the bag, it is drying out, so make sure that you work effectively. So in order to start our process, before we get to subtractive, additive, combination methods, all of that, we need our designs physically on our tiles. Now this is super important so that we know exactly where to add, to take away. All of our designing needs that base drawing on it first, so we're not just guessing for the rest of the way. So there are 3 different ways of adding our designs onto our tile. So I'm going to go over 3 different ways, and then I want you guys to pick which method you think works best for you and for your design. So watch them first, and then go ahead and start doing it yourself. Method number 1. Method number 1, you want to have your final design done already. This is on paper for the next step, but as long as you have your design done, you'll be able to do method 1. So I'm going to have that close by. And for method 1, what I'm going to do is using either the toothpick or a pencil or pen, I'm going to recreate the drawing directly onto the clay. So I'm going to actually kind of follow my design and draw super lightly, again, directly onto that clay. You don't want to push down too hard into the clay, otherwise you're going to accidentally start carving, and you don't want any of that carving to happen until your entire design's on there. So you can see as I bring it closer to the camera, very light sketch as I started to add all of my design. So it's right here in the corner, very light lines. Again, don't dig in too much. If you make mistakes, you just smush it with your finger and you're able to correct it like it's an eraser. See? Voila. So that's method number 1. You would draw directly onto the clay. Method number 2 and method number 3 both require your design to be on paper in proportion to the actual size of the tile. Remember again that I'm showing everything as a square. However, it totally depends on the actual shape of your slab itself. But with the square, I'll show you how to do this next step. If you haven't already drawn your design to the exact scale, so I gave you ahead of time the 4 inches by 4 inches, so if you wanted to draw it to that scale ahead of time, you're already good to go. If you're not in correct scale, you need to redraw your final design onto another piece of paper. So it has to be on paper here. To get the correct scale for your tile, you would put it actually physically on the paper, grab a pencil and pen, and trace around the tile. This is going to give you a rough size of the actual tile so that you know exactly the space that you're working with. Now you can kind of see it on my paper. If your tile's really wet, it is going to leave a weird impression here. That's totally normal and fine. You didn't do anything wrong. So from this point, you would then add your final design as I have done in my top box. So you want to make sure all the design is done, it's clean, it's nice, so that now, once your design is drawn, you'll put the paper for method 2 back onto the clay. And I'm going to line it up perfectly with my tile. So I can see it kind of goes off in some sections there. So I'm lining it up best I can with that tile, holding it still. Once I have it lined up, I'm going to want to grab a pen or a pencil. It kind of works with the toothpick, but not the best, so you want a pen or a pencil. And I'm going to redraw my design on the paper itself, but I'm pushing into the clay. So by pushing slightly into the clay, you don't want to break through the paper, otherwise it's going to make a real big mess. You don't want to push through the paper. But by designing first and then retracing it physically onto the clay, you have a lot of control in your drawing. It's easier to draw on paper than it is onto clay. So by doing this step in this method, you get a lot of control for how your design's gonna look. And I'm actually gonna go ahead and kind of do my entire design here because this is my favorite method and I want my design to come out super nice. Heads up again, don't push through so hard that it cuts through to the clay. If you notice that your design doesn't quite fit the tile, just commit to wherever you have it landed and then you can fix it afterwards. You don't want to have to move this paper while you're doing this process. Otherwise, all of your proportions are going to mess up. So I'm going through, adding all of the lines, every single line. Don't forget, it's easy to forget tiny lines, especially if you guys are doing really detailed stuff. So make sure you get all of those lines. Once you are done, pull the paper off like so. Some remnants of paper may still be there. That's totally fine. It'll come off as you start adding designs. But you can see that my drawing is fully on that tile. Just by pressing in a little bit onto the paper, my design is on that tile. There is one more method. The third method does all the same stuff as method number 2, except when you go to add, again, same setup, draw your design to the scale, but when you go to add your paper, instead of drawing with a pen or a pencil, just in case you don't have one, you can use your toothpick, and again, line it up. Instead of drawing it again, you can instead use your toothpick and poke little tiny holes into the paper. As I'm doing that, what I am doing, I'm going to remove it early here because it's way off from my previous design there. What I'm doing is creating a nice connect the dots that I can then connect with that toothpick, like so. So that's the third method, would be to do the whole thing out of those tiny little holes, creating a nice solid connect the dots. Now it doesn't matter that I messed it up a little bit because I can fix it with a little bit of redrawing. Easy, easy to fix any issues. And if you notice any part that did not quite transfer, you can easily fix that up once it's on the tile itself. There's one more trick I'm going to show you in this video, and that is adding a border to your tile. So many of you have borders that go around your tile, and it's really, really tricky to be able to get a nice even border where all sides are the same thickness. So to get a nice even border, this is optional. What I like to do, I'm going to move that all to the side. What I like to do is grab my small modeling tool from my toolkit. So not the big one, I want the small one. And my toothpick. And I'm going to use the width of the modeling tool to create my border. So I'm going to set it down on my tile. I'm actually taking my gloves off for this because it's a little hard to do. I'm lining it on my tile, making sure it's flat against the edge of my tile, taking my toothpick, and lightly, again lightly, drawing a line across the top of that tile. See how I got that line across? Now I have a border on that side. I then have to do it on each side of my tile. So again, lining it up, using the width of the popsicle stick of our modeling tool to create this border. And do it again. For those who used fancier borders, you can still use this method to kind of start out to give yourselves a rough proportion of equal width all the way around. Because what you don't want to do is have a really messy border that's a bunch of different widths when your designs are really, really cool. So see, I got a nice border all the way around. Any areas where my design goes over the border, I can just smoosh that away. And then I am all good to go. So this is how to add your design onto your tile. Feel free to rewatch any section of the video to help you guys out. Good luck. Email me if you have any questions. Bye-bye.